The universe was not kind to predators. This truth had echoed across the cosmos for 3 million years, whispered in the quantum frequencies of dying civilizations and carved into the charred remains of 1,000 worlds. The Zephyr Dominion knew this truth better than most. They had written it in blood and starfire across 67 sectors, their crystalline vessels cutting through space like surgical instruments through flesh. They were apex hunters. Born in the crushing depths of gas giant storms, evolved in perpetual twilight, where only the strongest survived to see another rotation. Their elongated limbs moved with serpentine grace, forearms ending in razor-sharp talons that could slice through titanium as easily as paper. Their compound eyes saw across 17 spectrums of light, missing nothing, not the heat signature of prey hiding behind cover, not the electromagnetic pulse of a weapon charging, not the subtle shift in gravity that preceded an ambush. For 3 millennia, they had ruled the outer rim territories with calculated precision. Every species they encountered fell into one of 2 categories: useful resources to be harvested or obstacles to be eliminated. There was no third option. There had never been a third option, until now. Commander Haxthul stood at the observation deck of the piercing silence, his primary arms clasped behind his back while his secondary hands manipulated a holographic display. The blue-green marble rotating slowly before him looked deceptively peaceful, swirling white clouds, vast oceans that caught and reflected the light of its yellow star, continents painted in browns and greens that spoke of abundant life. Earth. "The preliminary scans are complete, Commander," reported his tactical officer, Yithmora, her voice carrying the subtle harmonic undertones that indicated focused attention. Population approximately 8 billion sentient entities. Technological development consistent with a Class 4 civilization, nuclear capabilities, primitive space travel, limited to their immediate stellar neighborhood. Haxthul's compound eyes shifted across the light spectrum, analyzing the data streams flowing past his vision. Energy signatures, chaotic, diverse. They appear to use multiple fuel sources simultaneously: fossil combustion, nuclear fission, solar collection, wind generation. Highly inefficient by our standards. Yithmora's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Their weapons technology follows similar patterns: projectile-based kinetic systems, chemical explosives, some electromagnetic pulse capabilities, nothing approaching plasma integration or quantum disruption. In their social structure. A pause. Longer than protocol typically allowed, but Haxthul had learned to value Yithmora's thoroughness over speed. When she spoke again, her voice carried a note of uncertainty. "Complex, Commander. They appear to be divided into multiple nation-states, often in conflict with one another. No unified government or military structure. However, their historical data suggests unusual behavioral patterns during existential threats. Previous global conflicts show rapid adaptation, technological advancement, and unexpected unity." Haxthul's tertiary eyes focused on the tactical display while his primary vision remained fixed on Earth. Red dots indicated major population centers, sprawling metropolitan areas that housed millions of these creatures. So many potential resources, so much untapped labor potential, and yet, "Broadcast standard surrender terms," he commanded. "Planetary-wide transmission, all frequencies. Give them 72 of their rotational periods to respond." The bridge fell silent except for the subtle hum of the ship's quantum processors. Finally, Yithmora spoke. "Commander, standard protocol for Class 4 civilizations typically allows only 24 rotational periods for surrender. 72 seems generous." Haxthul's mandibles spread slightly, the Zephyr equivalent of a smile. "Call it professional curiosity. These humans have spread to every continent on their world, survived ice ages and asteroid impacts, built civilizations in environments ranging from Arctic tundra to tropical deserts. They adapt. I want to see how they adapt to us." 3 days later, the answer came not in words but in action. The first human transmission was intercepted at 0347 Standard Time, originating from a facility the translation protocols identified as NURAD. Apparently some form of military coordination center. The message was brief, transmitted in multiple human languages simultaneously. but the underlying meaning was unmistakable. No, not "we surrender conditionally," not "we request terms of negotiation," not "we yield to superior force." Simply, no. Commander Haxtell studied the transmission data for 17 minutes, his compound eyes shifting through spectrums as he analyzed every aspect of the signal. The electromagnetic signature suggested the message had been broadcast from multiple locations simultaneously, a coordinated response that implied rapid communication and cooperation between previously separate military structures. "Fascinating," he murmured. The second message arrived 6 hours later, originating from a different location entirely. This one contained more information, technical specifications. Actually, the humans had apparently been studying their ships, conducting detailed analysis of hull composition, energy signatures, even gravitational displacement patterns. "Impossible," Ythmora stated flatly. Class 4 civilizations lacked the sensor technology to perform such detailed scans at this range, and yet Haxtell gestured at the display. "Here we are." The third transmission changed everything. It came not from a military facility, but from what the translation protocols identified as a lumber mill in a region called Oregon. The message consisted entirely of acoustic data, the sound of something mechanical starting up, running for precisely 60 seconds, then shutting down. The frequency analysis made Haxtell's secondary heart skip a beat. "Commander," Ythmora's voice carried an edge of confusion, "they're sending us the sound of cutting tools?" Haxtell was quiet for a long moment, his mind processing implications that seemed to cascade in every direction. "Not just any cutting tools," he said finally. "Analyze the frequency patterns. Compare them to our hull resonance data." The results appeared on the holographic display 30 seconds later, and Haxtell felt something he hadn't experienced in 300 years of conquest. Fear. "The acoustic frequency is calibrated to match the resonance patterns of our hull plating," Ythmora reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "They've identified our ship's structural weakness, and they're showing us they know." "How many of these tools do they have?" "Scanning, Commander. Initial estimates suggest millions, possibly tens of millions. They appear to be standard equipment across their forestry and construction industries." Haxtell's primary arms clenched involuntarily. In the 3,000 years of Zothkari expansion, no species had ever analyzed their technology and identified a countermeasure within 72 rotational periods. Most couldn't do it within 72 years. "Sir," Communications Officer Dexanelli interrupted from his station, "we're receiving another transmission. Multiple sources this time." The display filled with data streams, thousands of them, originating from every continent, every major population center, even remote locations that barely registered on their sensors. But it wasn't the quantity that made Haxtell's compound eyes widen. It was the content. Each transmission contained detailed tactical analysis of Zothkari military doctrine, compiled from historical data the humans had apparently gathered from studying energy residue at previous conquest sites. Battle formations, weapon capabilities, standard invasion protocols. Everything the Dominion had spent millennia perfecting was laid out in methodical detail. And at the end of each transmission, the same message in the same human language. "We know who you are. We know how you fight. We know how you die. Come and take it." Haxtell stood perfectly still for 90 seconds, processing the implications. Then he turned to his tactical officer, his voice carrying the controlled precision of a predator who had just realized he was hunting something that could hunt him back. "Ythmora, initiate full military deployment. I want every ship in the sector, every weapon system online, every battle formation at maximum readiness." "Sir, surely a Class 4 civilization doesn't require our entire—" "They identified our hull resonance frequency in 3 days," Haxtell interrupted. "They compiled detailed tactical profiles from battlefield residue we left behind decades ago. They've coordinated a planetary response that spans multiple governments and military structures, and they did it faster than our own command networks could process the initial data." His mandibles clicked in what was definitely not amusement. "These are not ordinary prey, Ythmora, and I have the distinct impression." He paused, watching Earth rotate slowly on the display, those swirling clouds hiding 8 billion entities who had just declared war on the most successful predatory species in known space. I have the distinct impression that we are about to learn why they survived ice ages. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge of the piercing silence in absolute silence. 3 light minutes away on a world called Earth, 8 billion humans began sharpening their chainsaws. Captain Jake Morrison had been running on coffee and stubbornness for 67 hours straight, and he was just getting started. The Situation Room at Peterson Air Force Base hummed with controlled chaos. Dozens of officers and analysts hunched over displays, cross-referencing data streams that shouldn't have existed with countermeasures that violated at least 3 laws of physics. The air tasted of burned coffee, electronic ozone, and the particular brand of exhaustion that came with trying to save the world on a deadline. "Talk to me, Rodriguez," Morrison called out to his science liaison, a former MIT professor who'd been pulled out of retirement the moment the first alien transmission hit the atmosphere. Dr. Carmen Rodriguez looked up from her workstation, her eyes bloodshot but sharp with the kind of focus that only came from staring extinction in the face. "The resonance frequency analysis is solid, Captain. Their hull plating uses a crystalline matrix that's incredibly strong but has a specific harmonic vulnerability. Hit it with the right frequency at the right amplitude, and the molecular bonds destabilize." "How right are we talking?" "Within 0.03 Hz of the target frequency, maintained for a minimum of 47 seconds. Rodriguez pulled up a holographic display that showed the alien ship's structure overlaid with vibration patterns. "The good news is that standard chainsaws, properly modified, can generate exactly the frequency we need." Morrison nodded, then turned to the tactical display where Major Lisa Chen, no relation to the forbidden name, was coordinating with military units across the globe. "Status report, Major. Global coordination is ahead of schedule, sir. Russia has mobilized their entire forestry industry. Canada's already airlifted 2,000 chainsaws to urban centers. The Japanese have somehow managed to manufacture 15,000 new units in the past 48 hours. Chen's fingers danced across the interface, calling up production numbers that scrolled past in green digits. "But Captain, we need to talk about the math." Morrison felt his stomach drop. In his experience, conversations that started with "we need to talk about the math" never ended well. "What math?" "The aliens aren't sending one ship, sir. Deep Space Monitoring has detected 17 vessels, each approximately 2 kilometers in length, approaching in formation. Even if our frequency attack works perfectly, we're talking about trying to disable 17 ships simultaneously, using tools designed for cutting down trees." The room fell quiet except for the constant hum of computers and the distant sound of jets taking off from the runway outside. Morrison stared at the tactical display, watching red dots represent alien ships that could potentially glass the entire planet before breakfast. "Rodriguez, how many chainsaws would we need to disable one of their ships?" The scientist's fingers flew across her keyboard, running calculations that had never been attempted in the history of human warfare. "Assuming optimal positioning and coordination, minimum of 800 units working in perfect synchronization." 800 chainsaws per ship. Morrison felt a laugh building in his chest, the kind that came right before either breakthrough or breakdown. "So we need roughly 13,600 chainsaws, operated by people who've probably never held one before, all working together with precision that would make a Swiss watch jealous, against an enemy that's been conquering planets since before we invented agriculture." That's actually a fair summary." "Yes, sir." Morrison was quiet for 30 seconds, staring at numbers that suggested humanity's survival depended on the single most ridiculous military strategy ever conceived. Then he picked up the secure phone that connected directly to the Pentagon. "This is Morrison. Put me through to General Patterson." "Yes, I'll hold. General, we need every chainsaw manufacturer in the country to triple production immediately." "No, sir, I'm completely serious, because we're about to turn 70 million lumberjacks into the most important military unit in human history." Meanwhile, 17 light minutes away, Commander Haxthal was beginning to understand that he had made a catastrophic miscalculation. The piercing silence shuddered as another probe ship detonated against Earth's atmosphere, its quantum sensors vaporized by what appeared to be coordinated strikes from primitive kinetic weapons. That made 12 probe losses in the past 6 rotational periods, more than the Dominion had lost in the past decade of conquest combined. "Report," he demanded, his primary arms gripping the command console with enough force to leave talon marks in the metal. "The surface is active, Commander," Ythmora replied, her voice carrying undertones of confusion that bordered on distress. "They've established what appear to be defensive perimeters around every major population center, but the energy signatures don't match any known weapons technology." "Show me." The tactical display shifted to show Earth's surface in real-time electromagnetic spectrum analysis, revealing patterns of activity that defied explanation. Every major city showed coordinated movement, millions of entities moving in organized patterns that suggested military deployment. But the weapons signatures were unlike anything in the Dominion's database. "Commander," Communications Officer Dexnally interrupted, "we're receiving another transmission from the surface." "Audio only?" "Negative, sir. Full holographic transmission, multiple languages, broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously." The display shifted, and suddenly Haxthel found himself staring at a human male, bipedal, short by Zeftikiri standards, with pale skin and small eyes that nevertheless seemed to look directly through the display into Haxthel's compound vision. "My name is General Frank Patterson, United States Air Force, and I'm speaking on behalf of the people of Earth." The human's voice carried a quality that the translation protocols struggled to capture. Something between confidence and controlled fury. "We received your surrender ultimatum. We've considered your terms carefully." The human held up a device that Haxthel immediately recognized as one of their cutting tools, the source of those frequency transmissions that had so disturbed his tactical analysis. "This is our response." The cutting tool activated with a sound that made the piercing silence's hull plating vibrate in sympathy. Haxthel felt his secondary heart skip as the frequency analysis confirmed his worst fears. The humans had not only identified his ship's vulnerability, they had weaponized it. "In approximately 18 hours our fleets will arrive at your world," the human continued. "Standard Dominion protocols suggest you have until then to surrender unconditionally, abandon your planet, and accept deportation to designated labor colonies." The human's facial features shifted in what Haxthel recognized as a predatory expression, something his own species called a hunt smile. "We're here to inform you that Earth does not surrender. Earth does not retreat, and Earth does not lose." The transmission cut to show aerial views of human population centers. But now Haxthel could see what his sensors had been detecting. In coordinated formations that spanned continents, millions of humans stood in precise geometric patterns, each holding one of their cutting tools. The mathematical precision was staggering. Formations designed to maximize acoustic resonance, positioned to create overlapping fields of destructive frequency. "You wanted to see how we adapt," General Patterson's voice continued over the imagery. "Congratulations. You're about to witness the most comprehensive planetary defense in recorded history. We've mobilized 90 million chainsaws, operated by volunteers who answered the call in less than 72 hours. Teachers, farmers, mechanics, retirees, teenagers who've never held power tools, all of them ready to stand between you and our world." The display shifted again, showing factory floors where humans worked around the clock producing more of their cutting tools, supply chains coordinating across multiple continents with efficiency that rivaled Dominion logistics networks. "We've studied your tactics. We've analyzed your technology. We've identified your weaknesses and weaponized our strengths." The human's voice carried absolute conviction. "You've conquered 67 sectors by targeting species that fought you with conventional warfare. Species that tried to match your superior technology with inferior versions of the same weapons." Now the display showed historical footage. Humans in combat throughout their history, using improvised weapons, guerrilla tactics, adaptive strategies that turned technological disadvantages into strategic advantages. Earth is different. We don't fight fair, we don't play by rules, and we sure as hell don't surrender to bullies who think superior technology makes them superior beings. The final image was a close-up of the human's face, those small eyes locked onto the camera with an intensity that made Haxthel's tertiary vision systems recoil. "So here's our counteroffer, Commander. You have 18 hours to withdraw from our system, Leave now and this doesn't have to get messy. Stay and discover why humans are the only species that ever looked at an ice age and decided to fight it. The transmission ended. The bridge of the piercing silence was silent for exactly 47 seconds before Haxtul spoke, his voice carrying the controlled precision of a predator who had just realized he was no longer at the top of the food chain. Yethmora, what's the maximum sustainable range for our plasma weapons? Approximately 12,000 kilometers, Commander. And the effective range of their cutting tools? Unknown, sir. But analysis suggests they would need to achieve physical proximity to our hull to maximize acoustic penetration. Haxtul's mandibles clicked in what was definitely not amusement. Physical proximity. They planned to fight a space battle with hand tools. It would appear so, Commander. Haxtul stood perfectly still for 90 seconds, his compound eyes analyzing tactical probabilities that all led to the same impossible conclusion. Then he activated the fleet communication system, his voice reaching 16 other ship commanders across the battle formation. All vessels, this is piercing silence. Initiate battle protocol Omega. Full planetary bombardment. Maximum yield all weapon systems. A pause? Then, sir, Protocol Omega is reserved for Class 7 civilizations with confirmed dreadnought capabilities. These humans barely qualify as Class 4. No, Haxtul said quietly, watching Earth rotate on his display. That blue-green marble that had just declared war on the most successful predatory species in known space. These humans qualify as something else entirely, something we've never encountered before. The fleet began charging weapons that could crack continents. On Earth, 90 million chainsaws began their final startup sequence. The sky above Denver turned white at 0634 Mountain Time. Jake Morrison watched 17 Zefkiri dreadnoughts descend through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, their crystalline hulls catching and refracting sunlight in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Each ship was 2 kilometers of engineered death, powered by technology that made humanity's most advanced spacecraft look like stone axes, and arrayed against them, in precise geometric formations across 6 continents, 90 million humans stood ready with chainsaws. All stations, this is command. Morrison spoke into his headset, his voice carrying across communication networks that spanned the globe. Alien vessels have cleared the thermosphere, estimated time to weapons range, 14 minutes. All civilian populations to designated shelters immediately. The response came back in dozens of languages, from coordinators in Moscow and Tokyo, São Paulo and Lagos, Sydney and Mumbai. 90 million voices checking in, confirming positions, reporting ready status. Farmers who'd never seen combat, teachers who'd spent their lives nurturing young minds. Retirees who'd answered the call because someone had to stand up. All of them armed with tools designed for cutting wood, about to face down the most sophisticated military force in known space. Rodriguez, final systems check. Morrison called to his science team. Frequency calibration locked at 84.7.396 Hz. All units synchronized to quantum GPS timing, came the reply. Acoustic modeling shows optimal destructive resonance at 47-second duration, plus or minus 3 seconds margin of error. Translation: we get one shot at this. One shot, yes. Morrison nodded, then activated the global command frequency. All stations, this is Denver Command. Enemy vessels have entered effective range. On my mark, 10 seconds to weapons free. High above, Commander Haxtul stared at the tactical display that showed 90 million red dots arranged in patterns that spoke of mathematical precision humanity supposedly couldn't achieve. Each dot represented one of their cutting tools, positioned with GPS accuracy that rivaled Dominion targeting systems. Sir, Ythmora reported, preliminary bombardment is ready. Plasma lance arrays are charged and targeted on primary population centers. We can end this in minutes. Wait, Haxtul commanded, his compound eyes fixed on the display. Something was wrong. The human formations weren't positioned defensively around their cities. They were arranged in massive circles, each formation centered on projected impact points for Dominion landing zones. They're not trying to defend their cities, he murmured. They're targeting our ships. Impossible, Commander. Their weapons have a maximum effective range measured in meters. Our vessels are operating at 12,000 kilometers altitude. Then why? The answer came as every human formation suddenly shifted. 90 million bodies moving in perfect synchronization to reorient their positions. Morrison's voice echoed across communication networks planet-wide. All stations. Mark. The sound began in Denver. 90,000 chainsaws igniting simultaneously, their engines revving to precisely 84 to 996 Hz. The acoustic wave propagated outward at the speed of sound. But that wasn't the weapon. The weapon was what happened when 90 million chainsaws, precisely positioned across 6 continents, all generating the exact same frequency at the exact same moment, created a standing wave pattern that encompassed the entire planet. Impossible, Ithimora whispered as the piercing silence's hull began to vibrate. But Commander Haxtell understood. The humans hadn't built weapon to reach his ships. They'd turned their entire planet into a resonance chamber. The acoustic wave generated by 90 million synchronized chainsaws didn't travel up to the Zefkiri fleet. It traveled through Earth's crust, through its molten core, emerging on the opposite side of the planet and bouncing back, creating a standing wave that built and intensified with each reflection. Within 30 seconds, the harmonic resonance reached critical amplitude. The first Zefkiri ship to suffer catastrophic hull failure was the Silent Hunter, positioned over the Pacific Ocean. Its crystalline armor began vibrating at its fundamental frequency, molecular bonds destabilizing as the acoustic energy built to levels that exceeded the material's coherence threshold. Commander Velthak had 17 seconds to realize what was happening before his ship's hull simply came apart. All vessels, emergency ascent, Haxtell commanded, as the piercing silence shuddered around him. Full power to propulsion systems. Clear the atmosphere immediately. But the humans had planned for that too. Rodriguez, initiate Phase 2. Morrison commanded as alien ships began their desperate climb toward space. Across the planet, the chainsaws fell silent for exactly 30 seconds, long enough to reset the acoustic pattern. Then they ignited again, this time at a slightly higher frequency, 85.1.7 Hz, the frequency that would destabilize Zefkiri propulsion systems. 3 more ships suffered catastrophic failure before they cleared the atmosphere. The Burning Claw simply stopped climbing at 8,000 meters, its engines seizing as harmonic vibration fractured the quantum containment systems. The Death's Whisper made it to 15,000 meters before its entire propulsion array exploded in a cascade of plasma discharge that lit up the night sky over Europe. Commander Haxtell felt his ship break free of Earth's atmosphere with the kind of relief that came from surviving something that should have been impossible. Around him, the surviving 14 vessels of his fleet limped toward orbital altitude, their hulls scarred and compromised, their crews traumatized by facing an enemy that had weaponized sound itself. Damage report, he commanded, trying to project authority over the chaos that had engulfed his bridge. 7 ships destroyed, Commander. Remaining vessels showing severe structural damage. Estimated repair time, Ythmora's voice faltered. Estimated repair time exceeds 40 rotational periods. And the humans? Still active, sir. Maintaining formation. Our sensors detect they're preparing another frequency shift. Haxtell stared at the tactical display, watching Earth rotate serenely below him while 90 million red dots maintained their geometric precision. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever damaged a Dominion fleet during the initial engagement. No species had ever turned their homeworld into a weapon. No species had ever looked at overwhelming technological superiority and responded by revolutionizing the very concept of warfare. Sir, Communications Officer Dexnally interrupted. We're receiving another transmission from the surface. General Patterson appeared on the display, but now Haxtell could see that the human was standing in one of the formation centers, surrounded by thousands of his species, all of them holding their cutting tools with the casual confidence of beings who had just rewritten the mathematics of space combat. Commander Haxtell, Patterson said, and Haxtell felt his secondary heart skip at the realization that the humans knew his name. I hope we have your attention now. Behind the human, the camera panned to show the formation in full. A perfect circle of chainsaw-wielding humans stretching to the horizon, each one positioned with mathematical precision that spoke of coordination abilities that shouldn't exist in a Class 4 civilization. 7 of your ships are gone, Patterson continued. The remaining 14 are severely damaged and barely capable of orbital flight. Your invasion fleet has been neutralized by 90 million volunteers armed with forestry equipment and a basic understanding of harmonic resonance. The human's expression shifted, and Haxthul recognized something in those small eyes that he'd seen in the mirror countless times over 3 centuries of conquest. The cold satisfaction of a successful predator. But we're not done yet, Commander. The display shifted to show orbital tracking data. Precise telemetry showing the positions and trajectories of every surviving HFY vessel. Data that should have been impossible for humans to obtain with their primitive sensor technology. We've been tracking your ships since they entered our solar system. We know your fuel reserves, your repair capabilities, your maximum sustainable range. Patterson's voice carried the controlled precision of someone delivering a death sentence. And we know that with the damage you've sustained, you don't have enough fuel to reach the nearest Dominion outpost. The truth hit Haxthul like a plasma bolt to his primary heart. The humans were right. 14 damaged ships, operating on emergency power, with compromised navigation systems and depleted quantum cores. They were stranded in enemy territory with no hope of reinforcement. So here's our final offer, Patterson continued. Surrender now. Submit to boarding parties who will secure your vessels and escort your crews to detention facilities. Accept prisoner of war status under the terms of our Geneva Conventions, which incidentally guarantee humane treatment even for hostile alien invaders. The human paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried absolute finality. Or we shift frequency one more time and finish what we started. Across the planet, 90 million chainsaws revved in perfect unison, a sound that reached through space itself to vibrate the hulls of 14 crippled starships. Haxthul stood perfectly still for 90 seconds, his compound eyes analyzing options that all led to the same impossible conclusion. The greatest military force in known space had been defeated by lumber tools and applied physics. 3,000 years of technological superiority, tactical doctrine, and predatory evolution had been rendered meaningless by a species that looked at acoustic resonance and saw a weapon. Open a channel, he commanded quietly. Sir, open a channel to the surface. All frequencies. The connection established, Haxthul found himself looking into the small eyes of General Patterson, the human who had just achieved something no species in recorded history had ever accomplished. General Patterson, Haxthul said, his voice carrying the controlled precision of a predator acknowledging a more successful hunter. The HFY Dominion formally surrenders to the forces of Earth. A pause, then acknowledged, Commander. Welcome to humanity. The chainsaws fell silent. 7 days later, the first human delegation arrived at the Dominion capital of Kepmolar aboard a converted HFY dreadnought piloted by former enemies who had become something approaching allies. General Patterson stood at the observation deck, watching alien cities sprawl across impossible landscapes, while Commander Haxthul provided tactical briefings on species that had never heard of Earth. Remarkable, Haxthul commented as the ship settled into orbital approach. In 1 week you've achieved what most civilizations require decades to accomplish. Your species learns faster than our predictive models suggested possible. Patterson smiled, the expression still disturbing to HFY vision, but somehow less predatory than before. You made a fundamental miscalculation, Commander. You assumed we were prey because we looked primitive compared to your technology. And our mistake? You never considered that maybe we looked primitive because we never needed to develop advanced weapons. Patterson gestured toward Earth's blue-green marble, now visible through the observation port. When your entire evolutionary history involves fighting ice ages, predators, natural disasters, and each other, you get very good at improvising solutions under pressure. Haxthul's mandibles clicked in what was definitely not amusement. It was something approaching respect. And now we're going to do what humans do best. Patterson's expression shifted to something that made Haxthul's tertiary eyes refocus involuntarily. We're going to adapt. 3 months later, the first human HFY joint scientific expedition departed for the Andromeda Galaxy. Their ships equipped with technologies that shouldn't have been possible. Quantum resonance engines that used acoustic principles, weapons systems based on harmonic manipulation, and defensive arrays that could turn entire star systems into resonance chambers. The universe was not kind to predators, but it was about to discover that humans weren't prey. They were something else entirely. The species that had looked at an ice age and decided to fight it was now looking at infinity and getting ideas.